After a disappointing 2024 campaign, how much leeway does JP Crawford have? We'll answer that and a whole lot more coming up here on Mailbag Monday. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Monday, November 18th, 2024. Totally the first time I'm doing this. This is Ty Gonzalez and Colby Batnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're going to be opening up the mailbag like we do here every Monday and answer some of your Mariners questions. We'll also be spinning the wheel for our top 5 Tuesday topics at the end of the show. But before we get into all that, shout out to our title sponsor today, Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB, that's LOCKEDONMLB, for $20 off your first purchase. And if you want to hear from me and Colby even more and help support the show, check out our Patreon. All you have to do is click the link in the description of this episode. Kicking off Mailbag Monday for us is Mariners CDZ, who wants to know what's one quote-unquote roll your eyes move that you feel the Mariners are destined to make this offseason that just has you saying, why? I don't feel like the Mariners are destined to make any move this offseason. Maybe keeping Mitch Haniger on the roster, which that's definitely a roll your eyes worthy, but that's not really a move. That's a non-move.
Yeah, I can't really think of any like to me, like the inevitable move kind of signifies like it's a player that we've talked a lot about. And like for us, that's like Brandon Lau, which is a good move, like depending on price, obviously all these are depending on price, but like Brandon Lau, Alec Boehm, like I'd be pretty happy if the Mariners got either of those guys. And so like, I wouldn't roll my eyes. I like Jonathan India is kind of like the guy, but it sounds like he might be headed to Kansas City here pretty shortly. So for Brady Singer, which is a fun trade, but obviously eliminates the Mariners as a possibility. But I guess like if we remove the word inevitable and just like who's a player the Mariners could acquire, that I'd just be like, why? What's the point? Brendan Rodgers comes to mind, and so does Ryan McMahon. So we're rolling. So does Ryan McMahon. So, like there's definitely,
we're having a great time recording this episode right now.
There are definitely a few players that I would be like, why? But none of them feel that inevitable because despite kind of the narrative that's floating around out there, the Mariners do fairly exciting stuff in the offseason. Like it's not like they're like not as exciting as they should be, right? They're not going after Ohtani and Soto, but like, they bring in Teoscar Hernandez, who's like an all-star level hitter. They bring in Colton Wong, who's coming off an all-star season. They bring in, Mitch Garver and Jorge Polanco, and like they make moves in the offseason. So it's not like they sit on their hands every winter. So yeah, like there are certainly moves that like they could make where I'd be like, what's the point? I don't get it. But I don't think that there are any of those players that fall into the inevitable category because I think the players that like we talk about a lot are players who actually would make an impact for the Mariners. So I don't really have anybody that kind of checks all the boxes of the question.
I feel like this question was asked because of what I said about Brendan Rodgers on Friday. Because like players like Rodgers and even Jonathan India, who's better than Rodgers, but still like both of those players, why? There's nothing that I see there in their profiles that makes me go, yeah, the Mariners need to go after that guy. So yeah, if they acquired, India or Rodgers, sure. If they kept Haniger on the roster, sure. That doesn't really count because again, that's more like inaction rather than action. So
like if they like signed Sebi Zavala to a major league contract, it'd be like, why? But that doesn't feel inevitable, so yeah, I just don't have a lot of players that check off the box of the question as a whole.
Yeah. But if something like that happens, we'll be sure to let you know.
Yep.
Kip wants to know, given Colby's comfort with Rayleigh at first base and say you signed Turner as mostly DH, but some first base, who would you target as a fourth outfielder, allowing Rayleigh to play mostly first? So this seems like more of a Colby question than a me question. So Colby, what do you think?
As it should be. Well, I think Luke Raley is your fourth outfielder, and I think that Turner's the backup first baseman. So I don't think you necessarily have to go add an outfielder. You also still have Dylan Moore on your bench. I don't think you necessarily have to go get a pure outfielder. I think you're just kind of looking for the best bench player I can get. And he doesn't have to play outfield because, again, Raley can play the outfield and Dylan Moore can play the outfield. And unfortunately, it seems like Mitch Haniger is probably going to be around. So he would be the other one. But, in terms of like who's like a bench bat, a fourth outfield type that I would go get, Mike Tauchman, Ty's favorite, does make a good deal of sense. I would sure. I would love a guy like Mike Yastrzemski. I'm not paying him $10 million to be a fourth outfielder. So the name that I came up with when I was doing my offseason planning probably would require a trade. I don't think that he's going to get non-tendered, but maybe he does. But either way, how about you go get Jake Fraley back? Fraley hits righties. Pretty good defender, not great in center, but like, Luke Raley-ish in center, but can handle left and right very well, gets on base, still has some pop, can steal some bags. Like he's only going to make, I think, like $3.5-4 million. So that falls right in range. And it does give you some Victor Robles insurance. So you don't have to move, so if Robles struggles or whatever, you don't have to move Raley to the outfield full time, move Turner to first base full time. And then you have a blank spot at your DH, right? So like, yeah, I think Jake Fraley is a guy, that idea that I like quite a bit as a fourth outfielder. And there's guys like that all up and down, but I'd like some athleticism, some speed, some on-base skills, some pop. And I think Fraley checks a lot of those boxes. So that's a guy, but I don't think they really have to go out and get another outfielder. They just need to go get the best bat they can and figure it out from there. But if they want a true like fourth outfielder and a guy who kind of is good enough to keep Luke Raley at first base regardless, then I think a guy like Jake Fraley is a good target.
Ian wants to know, how much patience do the Mariners have for JP this year? Is he in a similar situation to how they just treated Ty France?
We're talking about the Mariners not being willing to walk away from $17 million on Mitch Haniger, who's worthless. JP Crawford, at the very least, is going to have some value to you because he's probably going to be at least an average shortstop. He's probably going to walk a little bit. So like, he's not worthless, but I do think that this is like JP's last year with, we'll call it a stranglehold on shortstop. Like I think after this year, JP doesn't produce. He's not guaranteed to be back in 2026. He's not guaranteed to be the shortstop. He's not even guaranteed to, be on the roster or be, in Seattle. So I think this is the last year. I don't think they're going to DFA him like they did France because he does have one more year on his contract. And this team refuses to swallow money on sunk cost, which is very frustrating. But I think you got to give JP at least, 3 or 4 months to start the year and see how it looks. And then there is a possibility that he either slides to second or he gets benched for somebody like Cole Young, even who can play a pretty decent shortstop. So I think he's definitely like his Mariner, like, I don't want to say his Mariner career is on the line this year because I'd be very surprised if he didn't finish the year, with Seattle. Maybe it's on the IL or whatever, but I think he finishes the year with Seattle. Next winter, I think, is the real time where, like, we could legitimately trade him, or he could be, salary dumped or DFA'd or what have you, or maybe he's just on the bench or he's the second baseman and Cole Young's the shortstop. I think he's got pretty safe play time locked up for 2025. After that, who knows? And if it's really bad in July, I think he'll still be here, but I think he'll just be benched and they'll just go to a different option at shortstop. So in terms of like, when do they finally start to strongly consider moving on? Yeah, I think that could be June, July. But are they actually going to do it this year? Probably not. Not like they did with France, because France, they could non-tender, or they were going to non-tender him this winter anyways. Yeah. So not a big deal to DFA him. So I don't think they're going to do that with JP. So I think he's got a year.
JP is guaranteed $23 million between the next 2 years, 11 this year, 12 next year. It's not that substantial, but for the Mariners, it's probably substantial enough that they're going to let that rock as long as they possibly can. But yeah, now that there are in-house options getting closer to the big leagues, like Cole Young, maybe Cole Emerson is a part of the conversation here in the next year and a half. Obviously, you have Dylan Moore and Ryan Bliss and some other guys as well that could factor into the mix. I do think that there's at least a little bit of pressure on JP to start turning things around here. But again, because of the money, I think they're going to. There's quite a bit of leash here for JP, especially compared to Ty France.
Right, and unlike France, he's not coming off of back-to-back disappointing years. It was just a year ago that he was the best shortstop in the American League offensively, not named Corey Seager. He'll get at least a year, but that salary is movable if he's even like decent.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's a albatross contract. You might be able to get out of it in July you're probably not going to. I think the earliest I could see JP moving on would be next winter. He's not going to get the Ty France treatment.
All right. We will answer more of your questions here in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 back in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. It is Mailbag Monday. We have Top 5 Tuesday coming your way tomorrow. We'll be spinning the wheel for our topics for that a little later on in this show. But let's get back into your questions for now. Garrett wants to know, why do you guys say the Mariners have next to no shot to sign Roki Sasaki? I don't necessarily disagree, but the Mariners do have a good pitch to him. I'm just curious of your reasons as to why they don't have a good chance. I mean, we've pretty much said as much whenever we've talked about Sasaki. It's just the Dodgers element of this, and maybe that's a very narrow view of the situation, or maybe that's all it really comes down to, right? Because again, the Mariners have a great pitch to make to Sasaki, as we've talked about, as we've acknowledged. But the Dodgers can say, we just won the World Series, and hey, we have Shohei Ohtani and we have Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Now, maybe that doesn't matter to Roki Sasaki, and at that point, maybe the Mariners have as good of a chance as anyone to land him. Mm-hmm. But yeah, until I see more reports saying that, we really just have the one from Jim Allen out of Japan. Until I see more reports saying that, maybe he doesn't want to go to LA, I'm just going to assume that he's going to LA because it makes a ton of sense. And at that point, I don't think it really matters what the Mariners do.
Yeah. It's just kind of a reading the room type of situation where you just kind of look at all the reports, you put them all together, and it's like, look, if Jim Allen knows more than everybody else in the game, fine. But like when you see headlines like 30 of 30 GMs think that he's going to the Dodgers, blah, blah, blah. That's a lot to overcome. And the only like stateside reporter that I've seen kind of dispute this is Jim Bowden. Like, yeah, that's a guy I'm going to take super seriously. It's just one of those things where I just look at the totality of the evidence that we have. And granted, it's not hard evidence, it's all circumstantial. But when you look at the preponderance of evidence, I believe is the term. When you look at it as a whole, it just all points to him going to the Dodgers with the Padres as a backup. No chance. I don't think we said that. I think we said like less than 1%. Might go up to 1%, but very small odds that he goes to Seattle. It's just like Ty said, it's, you could have the best pitch in the world. You can't say we have Yamamoto and Ohtani in our rotation already, and we just won the World Series. You can't say that. So
Yeah.
At that point, it might be game over. It's probably game over. So we'll see. But I don't love their odds.
Max wants to know, if you had to bet, name 5 Mariners prospects we are going to see make their MLB debut this year, if not traded. Cole Young.
Yep.
It's a good place to start. If he's not traded, I think we do see Harry Ford in some capacity at some point this year.
Could be a September call up, but yeah.
Yeah. I'll throw out like a weird one, like Jimmy Joyce, maybe.
Sure.
Like just as like it's a spot start, or, you know, he's like the 8th man in the bullpen for a couple of days or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, and then obviously like the pitchers, Logan Evans, Brandon Garcia. Yeah.
Throw Ben Williamson. I think I'd throw him over Jimmy Joyce, but it's not a guarantee with Williamson. I would be pretty surprised if we didn't see Young, again, assuming they're not traded. We didn't see Young and Evans, and probably Garcia for at least 1 or 2 games this year.
Maybe Morales.
Maybe. I'd be pretty surprised if we didn't see those guys. But yeah, if Young's not traded, he's going to debut, assuming he's not traded and also doesn't get hurt. We're going to see his debut pretty soon, this year, probably.
Yeah.
So
a couple of other weird ones, maybe like Jake Slaughter, you know, for
sure.
Like a couple of days.
Count those guys as prospects. Sure.
Yeah.
But like in terms of like actual prospects, I think it's Young, Garcia, Evans, Williamson, maybe Joyce, if you count him. Garcia could be an interesting one as a relief prospect. But yeah, I mean, like, it's going to be a better year. There's going to be
Hunter Cranton.
Right. I was going to say Hunter Cranton, Brockmore are like kind of the dark horse because they just started their professional careers. But they could go really quickly. I think this year they'll actually be legitimate like prospects to get excited about their debut. Whereas this last year it was like Taylor, I guess Bliss a little bit, but I think there'll be guys who are better than those two who will make their debut this year for the Mariners. So yeah, it's going to be a pretty good year for MLB debuts, at least from the Mariners side of things. Yeah. But I don't think like you're going to see any of the like elite prospects. I think you're still at least a year away from the elite of the elite types, which I mean, Emerson, really is
Laz, et cetera. Yeah.
Yeah. I think probably just those two would be the qualify as the like super exciting. Like the rest of them are good, or I think they'll be good, but they're not like all-stars, regular all-stars. So yeah, it'll be a good year for Mariner prospects. Cole Young is first with a bullet. So yeah.
All right. So we are going to answer more of your questions here and spin the wheel for our top 5 Tuesday topics in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Gametime. So I used to live in New Mexico, and down in New Mexico, there are 0 pro sports teams, and a lot of bands and artists that I listen to skip going there more often than not. So when I moved to Toronto, where there's a baseball team, a basketball team, a hockey team, even a soccer team, and there's great music being played every night in the city, I was right in my element. When I want to catch a ball game, or my wife and I want to see a band, I always get my tickets through Gametime. And that was the case well before Gametime sponsored our network and before I even joined the network, because it is truly the best ticketing service out there, hands down. I truly believe that. And now it's getting even better thanks to Gametime Picks. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I can just go on the app, it'll show me the best deal right away, it'll show me the exact view I'll have, and most importantly, it'll tell me exactly what I'm going to pay with Gametime's all-in pricing, so there are no annoying little fees that pop up at the last second. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB, that's LOCKEDONMLB, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. We are wrapping things up here on Mailbag Monday, and then we're going to spin the wheel for our top 5 Tuesday topics here in just a moment. John Stanton hates us, wants to know, would trading for Alec Boehm and Josh Naylor and piecing second base together with Demo and Rojas and Bliss be enough for the offense going into next year?
I think you'd be better than you were this year. I don't know if it's enough. It kind of depends. Like, do you think Alec Boehm 2024, like that's the real Alec Boehm? Can you repeat that at T-Mobile Park? I don't know. I'm not saying he can't, but I'm not saying he absolutely can. So, there's a question there. Rojas's bat will certainly play better at second, although the way he hit the last 5 months, it doesn't play in the major leagues. So position doesn't really matter there. Obviously, you run the risk of overexposing Dylan Moore. We know that story. We've seen that story play out, 3 or 4 times in Dylan Moore's career. We don't know what you're going to get from Ryan Bliss, but like if you're going to try and make a platoon work, I would prefer you do it at second base rather than third base. And then Naylor, obviously, DH first base type, big power. Used to be more of an on-base guy, kind of sold that out for power, but still hits for a pretty good average, still gets on base a good amount. So he would be a better addition at first base than what you had for most of this last year. So I don't know if it's good enough. I think you're better on paper. As for whether or not it works out in practicality, that's always the big question here, because the Mariners have had pretty good off seasons on paper. And they have made moves that make good sense on paper, and they just haven't really worked. So, until you see it, we don't really know. But like, if you're telling me like, if it's Naylor and Boehm and that's it, I don't know if it's enough, but you are better, at least in theory, you are better. Now, if it's like Naylor and Boehm and like Turner or whatever, right? Like if you add one more kind of C-level bat or Conforto or whoever, then I look at that and I go, yeah, that's a pretty deep lineup. Pretty reasonable. If you're going to piece it together with a platoon at one position, I would prefer that be at second base than third base. But, Boehm is kind of the X factor here, because I feel like Naylor's pretty safe bet. Boehm, little inconsistent in his career. Which one are you going to get? So there's some risk there in having Boehm at third base and not backing it up with like a close to surefire major league quality second base situation.
All right, so it's time to spin the wheel for our top 5 Tuesday topics. As you can see here, we've got the lovely helm, which is our Mariners topics, or more serious, focused Mariners topics. And it's my turn to spin this wheel, since I did the top 5 baseball movies last week, and Colby did top 5 trade chips on the Mariners. And as you can see here, we have some new options. So see if we land on one of those, because we only had 2 left from the original set that we put on here. And we're going to get one of those, it seems. One of the 2 original ones that were on here. Breakout candidates. All right, top 5 breakout candidates in 2025 for your Seattle Mariners. I'll be going over that on tomorrow's episode. So it's time to spin the wheel for Colby's topic. So we got some new options on here. Like, what did I add? Top 5 baseball memories, top 5 Mariners things you own. Stuff like that is on here. So let's see what you get.
Sound terrible.
You sound terrible. And it is top 5 MLB hats.
MLB. Oh man.
Not minor league baseball, unfortunately.
How am I supposed to show off my Lehigh Valley Iron Pig bacon hat?
I mean, you could just shoehorn it in if you want. I
mean, it's a major league hat because, the team who wears it is affiliated with the major leagues.
Seems like a stretch, but I might be willing to allow it. Or you could just be patient and hope that you get it here in the next couple weeks when you spin this wheel again. Yeah. It's right there. Yeah. It's right there. See, I'm hovering over it.
I demand a respin.
All right.
No, I'm good.
Respin? First respin in the history of Top 5 Tuesday? All right. Top 5 MLB hats coming your way tomorrow
this all
after
time?
I do. Sure.
Or do I get to set up my own parameters?
Set up your own parameters like you always do. I mean, You don't need me to tell you that. You were just going to do that anyway. So, yeah. Okay, so that's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Titan Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Titan Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. We're also on Blue Sky. You can follow me at TDG, Colby at MLB Colby, and the show at Locked On Mariners. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.